The subconscious mind controls the majority of our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. Therefore, it's important to have an understanding of how the subconscious mind works and how we can reprogram it so that it aligns with our conscious belief patterns. In the next few videos, we're going to take a look at the subconscious mind and how to reprogram it. Let's dive in. This video series is all about unlocking the subconscious, and this is really the gateway to your potential. The subconscious mind is the paradigm that was created for you as a child when the mind was still in the theta brainwave state and just accepting everything as truth. So let's get into it. So we'll begin here with a quote from the Bible. "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." Proverbs 23:7. So this quote shows how the subconscious mind is often likened to the heart. The conscious mind is the head, and the subconscious, the heart. So today we'll go over what the subconscious mind is, how it impacts our life and our success, and then we'll look at a little bit of science and wisdom tools to reprogram it. And then in future videos, we'll go deeper into this. So here are the other videos in the series here. The first one today, we'll go over unlocking the subconscious mind, so understanding how it functions. The next one, the science behind reprogramming, so why this works. And then the power of autosuggestion, unlocking the power of visualization, faith and belief, overcoming limiting beliefs, the role of gratitude, harnessing the power of meditation, consistency, and alignment with a new paradigm. Here's another quote from Earl Nightingale: "We become what we think." The mind is so powerful. And in yogic philosophy, the state of yoga is actually calming the fluctuations of mind. Why? Because when the mind is calm, we can see clearly ourselves, our true selves as we are, without the distortion that the mind creates. And so a lot of times the thoughts that we have are sort of hidden in these subconscious patterns where we act in a certain way. It's sort of like an automatic response, like a reflex. And then we don't even realize that we had that thought. And then we're like, oh, how did that happen? Well, that's the subconscious mind. And so if we're not clear about what we're thinking about, especially in the subconscious mind, then it's going to dominate our lives and prevent us from the things that we really want to see in our lives, prevent us from success, right? So let's take a look at this a little bit deeper. So here we have chitta, which is the mind stuff. Again, yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of mind. And the conscious belief patterns and the conscious thoughts that we have are just such a small portion of the entire mind field, right? So Patanjali refers to chitta as the mind field, which is the entire thing, not just the conscious thoughts, but also the subconscious thoughts, also the ego mind, which is a sense of separate I, right? A sense of a separate identity. It's the memory bank. It's all of it, right? So if you look at this iceberg here, you see the tip of the iceberg is representing the conscious mind. This is the logical thinking, willpower, short-term memory, critical thinking. The conscious mind is the aspect that analyzes and evaluates. It thinks and plans and reasons. And you can think of the conscious mind as the masculine aspect, sort of like your left brain, the left hemisphere of the brain, that is very logical, very organized, very patterned, right? The subconscious mind, on the other hand, which is shown by this deep reservoir within the iceberg here. So this one is responsible for beliefs, for our long-term memory, for protective reactions, right? Imagination. It controls all the systems in the body. So the automatic systems in the body, the involuntary reflexes and these habit patterns. The subconscious mind is also responsible for emotions, value, intuition, fears, self-image. So you see here these emotions and these feeling states, this more feminine aspect, right? The creativity, addictions, right? Intuition, dreams. So the subconscious is a lot like the right brain activity, right? The feminine aspect. And so when we look at the conscious and the subconscious mind, you really can liken it to these divine feminine, divine masculine qualities, which come out of balance and need to be brought back into balance. So from a yogic perspective, often what we're doing is, the masculine is very much the sympathetic response, where we get in this habit of doing, right? Where we get into stress physiology because there's so much that needs to be done. Hurry, 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 do the things, right? And then the feminine, which is the parasympathetic, that rest, right? That deep rest is what really shifts our emotions and our habit patterns, right? We know this if we're practicing yoga, right? Things like Yoga Nidra can access that subconscious state through very deep states of rest. When you're very overtired, overworked, your emotions are kind of going haywire, right? And you're resorting back to these habitual ways of behaving, right? We've all seen an adult, throwing a temper tantrum because they're overtired, over hungry, what have you. And these patterns are patterns that were learned in the early stages of childhood by the subconscious mind. Okay, so the seat of the subconscious mind within the brain is actually the cerebellum. So it's often called the little brain, right? So when we're practicing meditation, we're actually taking a journey through the landscape of the brain. So we begin at the prefrontal cortex, which is our sort of logical, analytical part of the brain, and we journey into the subconscious by systematically slowing down the brain waves. So here's an example of this, right? So here we have let's see, let me just pull this up here. Understanding the subconscious mind. So the subconscious, it says here, is the engine that is running 95% of the decisions, behaviors, and emotions. This is the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is picking up so much information, whereas the conscious mind is picking up very little. There's an analogy here. Your subconscious is like the soil in a garden. It nurtures what you plant, whether it's flowers or weeds. So whatever comes into the subconscious mind begins to grow. And so by taking a look at the subconscious mind and understanding how it works, we can decide what we want to plant, right? We can start to weed out, so to speak, habitual patterns of reactivity that don't serve us anymore, right? The brainwave state. So here you're looking at this chart, the beta brain waves. This is your waking state. This is your conscious brain waves. As we start to fall asleep, or as we start to relax or practice meditation, the brain waves start to slow down into alpha, which is a hypnagogic or a hypnoyogic state. This is the state that's sort of between waking and sleeping. Then we drop into theta. Theta is the dream state. So it says during stage 1 and stage 2, so a light sleep, this is your dream state. This is the state of the subconscious mind. And then underneath we have delta, which is deep sleep. This is the unconscious mind. And so it's important for us to be able to consciously slow down the brain waves so that we can access theta and reprogram the subconscious mind. How do we do that? Well, by deliberately slowing down the brain waves through conscious rest, through meditation, through every night when you fall asleep and every morning when you wake up, you can start to pay attention to the transition of your brain waves. Notice how they go from a very slow state, but you're awake, right? And then they move into beta as you wake up more, and as you're falling asleep, the reverse, right? So from beta to alpha to theta to delta. Um, and so we learn to access these states through these different tools that we'll cover in this video series. And the reason that it works is because of neuroplasticity. So here at the bottom, it says neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience. So what's happening in the brain is that neurons are firing and connecting and rewiring with each other. So whenever you start to create a new habit, let's say you are going to begin to meditate every morning when you wake up, couple minutes, right? So what's happening then is the brain is firing these it's creating these new neuronal pathways. So actually connecting neurons in the brain for meditation, for concentration. So, just like you go to the gym to build your bicep muscle, same with creating new neuronal pathways in the brain for concentration. The same exact thing is happening in the brain, in fact. And so each time you go to sit for meditation, you're creating this sort of super highway of neuronal pathways. So I explain this to my students as like when you're sitting for meditation and the mind gets distracted over here, and then you bring it back, right? And then it gets distracted and you bring it back. You get distracted, bring it back. You're creating new neuronal pathways and then reinforcing those neuronal pathways each and every time you bring the mind back. So you're essentially building your focus muscle. You're strengthening your focus muscle through habit. And that's how we reprogram the subconscious mind. That's how we reprogram it, is through doing the same thing over and over and over again, because that's exactly how it was programmed in the beginning. So in order to reprogram now, we have to create a new habit and a new neuronal pathway, which science tells us is totally possible because of neuroplasticity. Studies show the subconscious mind processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second, whereas the conscious mind only processes 40 bits of information per second. So what does that mean? So when you walk into a room, the conscious mind might be aware of, okay, there's a person over there and I'm going to go check this out, whatever. The subconscious mind, meanwhile, is aware of exactly where every single exit is, how many lights there are in the room, how big the space is, right? So the subconscious mind is picking up everything, so much more than the conscious mind. And what does that mean? Well, this last bullet point here, you see, habits and beliefs formed before the age of 7 dominate adult behavior. So why? Because before the age of 7, the dominant brain activity is theta brainwaves. This is the subconscious mind. So before age 7, everything is going right into the subconscious mind. This is why kids are such sponges, right? They can learn everything. They can learn languages, they can learn, sports and everything so easily when they're very young, is because the subconscious mind is just picking up everything, right? And so all of this information is going into the subconscious mind and then creating this map within the subconscious mind, which is dictating the adult behavior. So the second bullet point here says emotional and behavioral patterns stored in the subconscious influence 80 to 90% of decisions, right? So the majority of the decisions that we're making as adults is actually controlled by patterns that were set up before we were even 7 years old. Okay, the connection to yogic philosophy. So here we have this samskaras, which are impressions. So samskaras are essentially every single time through lifetimes, one chooses to act in a way that is attached to some result, some specific desired result. So acting with an attachment to an end result. A samskara is set up in the subconscious, in the latent, it says here, this repository of impressions and tendencies. And each time a person is choosing this attachment to an end result, attachment to this desire, right? The samskara gets deeper and deeper and deeper, basically setting up the opportunity for more experiences that are similar. And so For example, let's say you have one of these repetitive limiting beliefs that are like a broken record on replay in your mind, like I'm not good enough, okay? And so I'm not good enough plays over and over and over again in your mind. This is a samskara. This is a latent impression. And so what's going to happen is that your life will be perfectly designed for you to hear this impression again and again and again and again. So you will be presented with experiences where you think I'm not good enough, right? We're presented with experiences where you can again hear this latent impression so that at some point you recognize that it's happening, right? So these samskaras are perfectly designed for you to see the limiting beliefs, because at some point I'm not good enough is going to continue to keep you from your conscious belief patterns. It's going to continue to keep you from the success that you are destined for, right? And so if you notice that this pattern keeps coming up again and again and again, eventually you have to look at it, right? Okay, I am not good enough. Well, do I believe that? Is it true? What do I actually believe about myself? Well, if you follow yogic philosophy and you believe in unity and you believe that everything is connected and everything is one, then innately you are pure awareness, right? You are the pure consciousness. So that is the true self. And so to say, I am not good enough, this is a limiting belief. This is an attachment to a separate identity, right? And so this attachment to this separate identity of not being good enough and then setting up experiences where you can reaffirm the not being good enough over and over and over again becomes unnecessary, right? Because if you start to recognize, okay, I'm identifying as not being good enough, but that's not actually my conscious belief. That doesn't actually hold validity. This is a a pattern or a belief system that was set up before I was 7 years old, before my prefrontal cortex was even developed, right? So before age 25, really, the prefrontal cortex, which is the one that can analyze and reason and use logic, everything was just coming in without that filter, especially before age 7. And so these beliefs that were set up prior to being able to logically reason and analyze, right, are going to keep presenting themselves over and over and over again for us, for our growth. So these limiting beliefs are not meant to limit us. In fact, they're meant to show us and have us kind of stop in our tracks and be like, wait a minute, do I even believe this to be true? And so when these limited identities start to come up, they come up in a way of basically limiting our success. They come up in a way of, we have this goal or we have this idea for ourselves and we're not able to access it. We're not able to reach it because of this thing. And that's what points us back to our true self over and over and over again. So that's what the samskaras are. Here, the Mandukya Upanishad. So this is all about the states of consciousness. So in yogic philosophy, there are the 3 states of consciousness that we talk about in Western psychology, which is conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. And then there's a 4th state, which is the supraconscious state. And the supraconscious state means that we can permeate with conscious awareness all 3 states. We can be present in all 3 cities, as they describe it in the Mandukya Upanishad. And that's what we're learning to do by recognizing these habitual patterns that do not align with what we truly believe, right? So every time we are in this uncomfortable situation where reality doesn't seem to line up, right? Where this doesn't seem to line up with my actual belief pattern, that is a sign, right, that this is a subconscious program running that now needs to be reprogrammed, right? And so how do we reprogram it? Well, here's a little bit of information here at the bottom about neuroplasticity, okay? So it says neuroplasticity, as we talked about earlier, show that meditation reshapes the brain regions. related to self-awareness and emotion. So reshapes, repatterns this map in the subconscious mind that was set up before the age of 7, right? So before the age of 7, all the information was coming in and just accepted as truth, as this is reality, right? Because there was no filter. And it set up this map in the subconscious mind, which is the cerebellum, or you can think of it in yogic philosophy terms, the samskaras, and that creates the map for the life experiences to be presented to you, to decide whether or not you want to continue believing those patterns that were set up previously. Okay. So meditation reshapes the brain region. So this process of recognizing when the mind has gone over here and bringing it back, bringing it back, bringing it back. You're creating neuronal pathways so that you can recognize these patterns and shift them. That's how we reprogram the subconscious mind. It says gray matter increases the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, which enhances emotional regulation and memory. Okay, so that's what happens when we start to reprogram the subconscious mind. Now, the real life application. So here's your homework. Before you watch the next video, reflect on your existing thought patterns. Do you have a certain limiting belief that keeps coming up again and again and again, preventing you from accessing your highest self, from accessing the truth of who you are? Write it down and decide that you are going to shift it. We are going to reprogram it through these habitual these habits, basically, right? The same way it got in, we're going to reprogram it, to change it, to shift it, to align it with what we actually believe about ourselves. Okay, the last bit of homework is to commit to 5 minutes daily of meditation. All meditation is concentration. So for 5 minutes, pick one thing to concentrate on. Whenever the mind goes somewhere else, recognize where it's gone. Oh, okay, the mind is worried about, tomorrow or whatever. The mind is worried about this. I'm going to come back to this point of concentration. Doesn't matter what you're focusing on. Okay. You could focus on the tip of your nose. You could focus on a candle. You could close your eyes and focus on the heart. Doesn't matter. You're going to pick one thing to focus on. You're going to notice when the mind goes somewhere else. Acknowledge that it's gone there, right? Okay. If the mind is thinking about this, and then come back to that thing, right? Okay. So that is your homework. And in the next video, I will see you to start to look at what are these scientific tools that we can use to reprogram these thought patterns that are no longer serving us. Okay, I'll see you in the next lecture.